We begin in Afghanistan, where the Taliban's blitz of Afghan territory has continued, with fighters seizing control of the city of Ghazni. It's the 10th provincial capital to fall in recent days. The group has ramped up its offensive since May, as the US and its allies finalise the withdrawal of their troops. The surge in violence has prompted tens of thousands of Afghans to flee. And as Laila Humairah reports, those who stay fear their livelihoods could be crushed by the conflict.
Traders at this market in the western Afghan city of Herat are keeping their shops open, despite the threat of a Taliban takeover. For now, the army is protecting them. But the Taliban's rapid advance is heightening fears that the government's defenses won't be strong enough to withstand the group's assault. And that would spell disaster for the shopkeepers.
It's very difficult for ordinary people who don't have a job. There is a conflict at the moment, so work has stopped. People don't dare to come to the city because the roads aren't safe. I work in this market, and some days there are barely any sales. Other days, because of insecurity, we close early in the afternoon.
In a matter of days, the Taliban has captured several provincial capitals, seizing strategic roads, border crossings, and customs ports. Import taxes account for about half of the country's total domestic revenue, which is forecast to exceed $2 billion this year. The loss of income from at least 7 key border trade points is estimated to have cost the government more than $33 million. The UN says almost half the population lives below the poverty line, a figure that's likely to rise as violence and conflict spreads. Migration is also expected to increase as Afghans seek refuge outside the country. And the unemployment rate, which has already spiraled to 44%, could reach a record high as businesses shut down and investment dries up.
Countries providing transport services are uncertain about the conflict and fear that their vehicles and property may be damaged during the fighting. Traders in other countries can't export goods to Afghanistan, and the supply shortages have increased market prices.
For Afghans already struggling from the impact of the pandemic, rising inflation could force them to abandon their homes.
We have a sick patient in our family. We have to pay the rent and we have no money. We can't find anything to eat. When we leave the house, there is no certainty that we'll return.
Tens of thousands of people have already fled to neighboring countries. Many are also making the journey to Kabul, hoping the capital will be safer. But US intelligence agencies are warning Kabul could fall within 90 days. And with American and NATO troops set to complete their withdrawal by the end of August, the resurgence of the Taliban could create a humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan that will only exacerbate the economic collapse. Laila Humairah, TRT World.
Well, for more, let's speak with Tarek Farhadi in Geneva. He was an economic advisor to the former Afghan President Hamid Karzai, as well as the former Finance Minister and current President Ashraf Ghani. Good to have you back on the program, Tarek. I think many people are watching the Taliban's advances in Afghanistan with utter shock, quite frankly. They're clearly taking advantage of the foreign troop withdrawal that's currently underway. But it does beg the question, what have Afghanistan's leaders been doing over the last 20 years? Despite the resources, the billions of dollars in aid, why haven't the government there been able to build up strong defences to fend off any advance from the Taliban?
It happened over time, Oscar. I mean, the government received a lot of money and billions of dollars flowed into Afghanistan during these 20 years, but few people got very rich, and the majority of the people didn't. And that's why there is no uprising from the people of these cities when the Taliban enter the city. They just watch and see who will become stronger. Today, the Taliban have entered Herat and they have taken over the police headquarters. And Herat is important because 10 years ago, Afghanistan was trading to the tune of $4 billion a year with Pakistan. But as the relations got challenged with Pakistan, all the trade went towards Iran. And right now there's about $4 billion of trade with Iran, with most of the fuel and petroleum products being, of course, imported from Iran, food products being imported from Iran, and construction materials being imported from Iran. The port of Islam Kala, which is at the border with Iran, but near Herat, has been under the Taliban control for about 5-6 weeks now. And Taliban, every now and then when they open the port, they charge every truck about $610 as duty without looking at what's inside the truck. But what's most important here is that trade should flow, should continue despite the war, because the economic blockade of cities really hurt the people as businesses don't sell, and they don't have enough products to sell, and households, because of the war, have separated from their jobs, and they don't have enough money to buy anything in an environment where all the prices are going up. So that's the situation.
Yes, and as well as territory, the Taliban has also claimed key customs posts. I think you mentioned some earlier. And these customs posts obviously deliver much needed revenue to the Afghan government that the Taliban is now pocketing. Can you just describe the overall economic situation in Afghanistan right now, and how might the Taliban's advances impact that?
Well, yes, the donors are not funding the government directly because of the corruption. A couple of years ago, the donors decided, or a year ago, they decided that they would just fund the humanitarian agencies of the UN or the World Bank and have control of their own money. So the government was functioning pretty much with customs receipts. But half of the important ports, which is Islam Kala in the west and Spin Boldak with Pakistan in the south, are under control of Taliban. Only Hairatan with Uzbekistan and Torkham with Jalalabad with Pakistan are under the control of the government. But less import is happening there. Most of the import was from Islam Kala in the west, Herat. And beyond that, the roads are also cut. Taliban have managed to create pockets by taking over the highways, the motorways, as you would say. And it's very difficult for commercial merchandise to make its way from Herat to Kabul, for instance. It does, but it stops everywhere and pays taxes to various people, including the government, the policemen who want their own share, and the Taliban who tax it. The big question is, what will the Taliban do with this money? Will they use it to buy weapons? Because there's a war going on and they need weapons, or will they use it to help people? In Balkh province, there was a report that the Taliban was saying, "Oh no, we're going to use this money to rebuild broken buildings," and but we don't know yet. It's too early, really, to know how a Taliban government would function.
Now, the US President Joe Biden this week said that he doesn't regret his decision to withdraw American troops from Afghanistan, which is scheduled to be completed by September, and that's despite the recent gains by the Taliban. He says that the US has spent over $1 trillion over 20 years and trained and equipped over 300,000 Afghan forces. But do you believe, in light of the current situation, do foreign troops need to return to Afghanistan in order to fend off the Taliban?
At the current time, if foreign troops have to return, 100,000 foreign troops have to return. I mean, there is not a stalemate situation. The Taliban have made a lot of progress. They are in Herat, they are around Balkh in the north, they are in Kandahar today as well, and they are around Kabul. And within a month or two, they will knock on Kabul's door as well. And this is a fight where some elements within each one of these cities are inviting the Taliban. So it's very difficult to sort through. It's really a war between Taliban and the government is weak. Yes, the U.S. has trained 300,000 soldiers, but SIGAR, Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction, reports indicate that most of these soldiers don't receive their salaries. Somebody is keeping their salaries in Kabul or pocketing it, whatever. But this has been documented, and I think the Americans have had enough of dealing with a government which couldn't reform itself out of the corruption. And for the United States, it was a unilateral decision to leave, and with them, NATO left as well, because NATO could not stay in Afghanistan without American air cover. For Afghanistan, it's a consequential decision because we are entering an unknown period. We don't know how the Taliban will deal with people. They say this time they will leave people alone, but it is sure that lots of restrictions will happen on the way people live, especially women.
Okay. It certainly is a precarious time in Afghanistan. Tarek Farhadi, thank you so much again for joining us on the program.